Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Critic.Reading.Writing. My name is Quayson, and I am Professor of English and Chair of the Department of African and African American Studies at Stanford University. In this episode, we'll be looking at Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 1967 novel, 100 Years of Solitude, considered one of the best examples of magical realism in world literature. We shall see in the novel how Marquez mixes various fantastic motifs from biblical and Greek mythology and the Thousand and One Nights to provide a lively resource base for his magical realism, and also how he interweaves magical realism with events from Columbian and Latin American history. As we saw from our episode last week, magical realism is a mode of writing that sets up a scrupulous equivalence between the fantastic and the real. The ways in which this equivalence is established varies from text to text, but generally aims at eliminating any surprise or alarm by the appearance of fantastic alongside realistic details. Furthermore, the fantastic is not the source of either relief or terror or the resolution of a narrative or ethical impasse within the narrative. The fantastic is also not the sign of a systemic disorder of which it might be taken to be a symptom. We will see all these features amply illustrated in 100 Years of Solitude. Marquez draws from various events in Columbian and Latin American history for the background to events in his novel. Colombia achieved formal independence from Spanish rule in 1810, but within 2 years was plunged into the first of a series of civil wars and lengthy periods of conflict. The War of 1,000 Days between conservative and liberals had already lasted from 1899 to 1902, and the massacres of workers from a local banana plantation at Ciénaga on the northern coast of Colombia took place in December of 1928. Wars waged for a large part of the 19th century and the first half of the 20th century that culminated in the phenomenon referred to by Colombian historians as La Violencia from 1948 to 1958 between the Colombian Conservative Party and the Colombian Liberal Party, and fought predominantly in the countryside. Each of these historical events or processes either has a direct fictional representation in 100 Years of Solitude, or provides a compressed sense of the historical texture of the periods in question. Marquez also draws inspiration from the Cuban Revolution, which was successfully staged between 1956 and 1959. The Cuban Revolution was of great contemporary appeal for Latin American writers and thinkers, inspiring novels such as Carlos Fuentes' The Death of Artemio Cruz, Alejo Carpentier's Explosion in the Cathedral, and Mario Vargas Llosa's The Time of the Hero, among various others. The boom period of Latin American literature that is conventionally dated from the 1960s through the 1970s and associated with the writers I have just mentioned, along with Julio Cortázar, Miguel Angel Asturias, and of course with Marquez himself, marked an important literary renaissance for writing from the region and provided a good background for publishers and readers internationally for literature from the region. Marquez became the best known of the writers from the Latin American boom period. Also seen in the novel is the progressive arrival of technology and business in Macondo, the town founded by an aristocratic family that suggests the European Creoles that settled in Latin America from the 17th and 18th centuries. Gypsies, first depicted in the novel as purveyors of wondrous new technologies, such as the large magnifying glass that can turn sunlight into fire, are also later shown as purveyors of unbridled pleasures. The gypsies thus represent a scrambled sensibility in the novel that works like the complex conjoining of the scientific encyclopedia with the wonder-filled 1001 Nights. We also encounter epic myth-like figures such as Jose Arcadio Buendia, the patriarch of the family, who represents the spirit of the discoverer, explorer. Ursula, the ultimate matriarchal figure, who rules the brood in varying states of order and disorder. Colonel Aureliano Buendia, the great military patriarch. And Amaranta, the sexually repressed female who weaves her own shroud in which to be buried in. Fernanda del Carpio is also sexually repressed, but is additionally haunted by religious injunctions and frustrated images of greatness. The irresistible Remedios the Beauty takes interminable baths at all times of day and night, and is a combination of the Madonna and a siren who repeatedly attracts men to her who come to die in mysterious circumstances in her pursuit. Remedios ascends to heaven on a white bedsheet one fine afternoon, invoking paintings of the Ascension of the Virgin Mary. It has to be noted, however, that in 100 Years of Solitude, no single myth prevails, and that all the myth-like elements are inextricably interconnected to the unfolding of Columbian and Latin American history. In addition to the epic myth-like characters, the family saga is augmented by several stories reminiscent of classical and biblical myths. These include a lengthy flood that we are told lasts for 4 years, 11 months, and 2 days. The reign begins shortly after the arrival of Fernanda, who comes to marry into the Buendia family from outside Macondo. And the extraordinary rainfall causes severe flooding, isolating Macondo from the rest of the world and leading to the deterioration of the town's buildings and infrastructure. The flood demarcates an important period in the isolation, decline, and solitude of the Buendia family. Another myth-like story that also signals an important threshold much earlier in the novel is that of the plague of insomnia. The source of the plague is initially vague, but it turns out that it coincides with the arrival of the young Rebecca, the poor Indian girl who came to join the family bearing the illness from another remote town. The plague of insomnia spread quickly. This is what we see. They had indeed contracted the illness of insomnia. Ursula, who had learned from her mother the medicinal value of plants, prepared and made them all drink a brew of monk shoot, but they could not get to sleep and spent the whole day daydreaming on their feet. In that state of hallucinated lucidity, not only did they see the images of their own dreams, but some saw the images dreamed by others. When his father told him about his alarm at having forgotten even the most impressive happenings of his childhood, Aureliano explained his method to him, and Jose Acado Buendia put it into practice all through the house and later on imposed it on the whole village. With one inked brush, he marked everything with its name: table, chair, clock, door, wall, bed, pan. He went to the corral and marked the animals and plants: cow, goat, pig, hen, cassava, caladium, banana. Little by little, studying the infinite possibilities of a loss of memory, he realized that the day might come when things would be recognizable by their inscriptions, but that no one would remember their use. Then he was more explicit. The sign that he hung on the neck of the cow was an exemplary proof of the way in which the inhabitants of Macondo were prepared to fight against loss of memory. This is a cow. She must be milked every morning so that she will produce milk, and the milk must be boiled in order to be mixed with coffee to make coffee and milk. Thus, they went on living in a reality that was slipping away, momentarily captured by words, but which would escape irremediably when they forgot the values of written letters. The extraordinary insomnia plague signals not just the exhausting burdens brought on by forgetfulness, but also the arrival of writing and the inventive ways that the Buendias used to guarantee memory. Their resourcefulness is remarkable, for they are not ones to give up in the face of troubles, no matter how unusual or bewildering the troubles might first appear to be. The theme of memory is central to the novel and gets reiterated in different forms throughout. A temperament of delirious wonder also underpins everything that the Buendias do, whether it is in the peculiarly compulsive scientific researches of Jose Acado Buendia, or in the discovery of the joys and bewilderments of war of Colonel Aureliano Buendia. Many fantastic moments are directly associated with Jose Acado Buendia, the patriarch. Early in the novel, we are told, for example, that he spent several days in his alchemical laboratory, as if he were bewitched, softly repeating to himself a string of fearful conjectures without giving credit to his own understanding. Finally, one Tuesday in December, at lunchtime, all at once he released the whole weight of his torment. The children would remember for the rest of their lives the august solemnity with which their father, devastated by his prolonged vigil and by the wrath of his imagination, revealed his discovery to them. The earth is round like an orange. Ursula lost her patience. If you have to go crazy, please go crazy all by yourself, she shouted. But don't try to put your gypsy ideas into the heads of the children. Jose Acado Buendia's earnest announcement of what he takes to be a most profound scientific discovery and Ursula's matter-of-fact deflation of his pride forms a repeated pairing of aggrandizement and deflation that we find scattered throughout the novel and is a great source of its laugh-out-loud humor. In another instance, Jose Acado Buendia and his two sons are working assiduously in their laboratory trying to change base metal into gold. We are told that one afternoon, the boys grew enthusiastic over the flying carpet that went by the laboratory at window level, carrying the gypsy who was driving it and several children who were merrily waving their hands. But Jose Acado Buendia did not even look at it. Let them dream, he said. We'll do better flying than they are doing and with more scientific resources than a miserable bedspread. The sight of a flying carpet straight from the 1001 Nights elicits not even a slight flicker of interest in the patriarch. Rather, the fantastic sight is normalized first by the excitement his sons show at seeing other children flying on the carpet, and then by the father, who declares it as something backward that the experiments in the lab will help them surpass. In another episode, the itinerant gypsies come back to town with rumors of the death of Melquiades, their leader. Melquiades has always encouraged Jose Acado Buendia's spirit of scientific discovery, so he is understandably very distraught by the news. He goes about the gypsies' encampment trying to find news of his mentor. And this is what we see. Finally, he reached the place where Melquiades used to set up his tent, and he found a taciturn Armenian who in Spanish was hawking a syrup to make one invisible. He had drunk down a glass of the amber substance in one gulp as Jose Acado Buendia elbowed his way through the absorbed group that was witnessing the spectacle and was able to ask his question. The gypsy wrapped him in the frightful climate of his look before he turned into a puddle of pestilential and smoking pitch, over which the echo of his reply still floated. Melquiades is dead. Upset by the news, Jose Acado Buendia stood motionless, trying to rise above his affliction, until the group dispersed, called away by other artifices, and the puddle of the taciturn Armenian evaporated completely. Note that Jose Acado Buendia is utterly devastated at the news of Melquiades' death, but not at all startled at the sight of the taciturn Armenian turning into a puddle of smoking pitch right before his eyes, and above which floated a voice announcing that Melquiades was dead. Above all else, in its weaving of motifs from Columbian and Latin American history, and from the Bible, Greek mythology, Catholic iconography, and various other sources, 100 Years of Solitude also reads like an allegory of world history in which each of us can find a place in our imaginations. As one early review by Bernard McGurk and Richard Cardwell put it, 100 Years of Solitude is the story of the destiny of some characters, a household, a family line, and an insignificant community. But at the same time, it is the story laden with a surplus meaning that spreads out through successive concentric circles to take in not only the coastal area of northern Colombia, but the remainder of the country and the whole of Latin America as well, before finally encompassing the destiny of the human race. In the next episode, we will look at the narrative devices that make the novel such a classic of world literature. Thank you. Please remember to check out the suggested readings in the episode's description. And if you like this episode, give a thumbs up, subscribe and share. Hit the notifications bell so that you do not miss out on any upcoming episodes. And enter your comments in the section below. See you next week.